Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. With me here today is Mayor Brandon Scott, Special Agent in Charge Jim Mancuso of the Federal Homeland Security Investigations Baltimore Field Office, our Deputy Commissioner Cherie Briscoe, the District Major here, Major Tamisha Brown, and from Investigations, Lieutenant Herzog, and from the District Captain Wyman and members of the Northwest District Action Team. Today we're here to announce the bust of a drug and gun manufacturing ring that was operating in Baltimore City and in the state of Maryland. After a 3-month investigation that included our law enforcement partners at the local, state, and federal level, our officers executed a search and seizure warrant on a home within the Northern Police District. At this home, officers found the items displayed on these posters to include large amounts of illegal drugs, to include over 3,200 pills and almost 1,200 grams of suspected ecstasy, over 1,900 pills of suspected fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, scales for drug distribution, 15 firearms, and parts to manufacture 40 additional polymer 80 handguns, also known as ghost guns. In addition to the items seized, officers arrested 19-year-old Jordan Jones, 29-year-old Edward Miles, 39-year-old Latoya McCoy, and 39-year-old Norman Forrest. Each of these suspects are being charged with multiple violations to include drug possession, possession of stolen firearms, use of firearms in the commission of a felony, and other related charges. Not only were these individuals engaged in manufacturing and distributing illegal and dangerous drugs, to include fentanyl, they were also making privately owned firearms known as ghost guns. So far this year, our department has seized over 140 ghost guns, which is more than was seized the entire calendar year of 2020, which is up 400% from 2019. These firearms have increasingly found themselves in the hands of criminals, prohibited convicted felons, and even gun traffickers, because they know we cannot track them back to their origin. Additionally, last year, almost a quarter of these privately made firearms were recovered from individuals under the age of 21, with 14 years old being the youngest. Those manufacturing and distributing these firearms have no regard in the potential use of these firearms to shoot and even kill individuals within our city. Our officers continue to target those illegally carrying firearms, with gun arrests being up 11% so far this year. Additionally, this case is another example of the hard work and the collaboration with our federal law enforcement partners in targeting gun traffickers and those manufacturing and distributing illegal guns and drugs in our city. We know that real consequences are needed for gun offenders and those illegally possessing firearms within our city. And without the certainty of consequences in illegally possessing firearms, our criminal justice system continues to enable a culture of tolerance for those carrying and using illegal guns in our city. Together, we will continue to combat illegal gun and drug trafficking more effectively to assist with reducing crime and making our city safer. Additionally, I also wanted to address that just yesterday, our department announced that a total of 25 homicide suspects have been arrested since mid-May. These arrests would not have been possible without the ongoing support of our community members in providing information to our department, the diligent investigative work of our detectives, and all of our law enforcement partners working collaboratively. As I've said before, we will continue to go after those terrorizing our communities and responsible for the violence in our city, working hand in hand with our law enforcement partners, our elected leaders, city agencies, and communities. We will rid Baltimore of this continuous cycle of gun violence. And I really want to take my hat off and give a strong thank you and a word of gratitude to the men and women standing behind me who put forth the work to bring this case to fruition. It is their work their dedication to duty, their unwavering persistence that brought this to fruition. We need more of it, and we're doing it, so thank you for the hard work. This time I'll turn it over to Jim Mancuso.
Thank you, Commissioner Harrison and Mayor Scott, for the opportunity to be here today. Good morning. On behalf of the men and women of Homeland Security Investigations Baltimore Field Office, I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize the recent arrests as part of an outstanding joint effort and to acknowledge the critical partnerships which enabled this operation to succeed. Thanks to the combined work of HSI Baltimore and the Baltimore Police Department, today we take a step further in our fight against criminal networks by stemming the flow of illegal firearm sales and destructive drugs within our communities. Ghost guns are a fairly new yet extremely dangerous phenomenon. They are easily purchased over the internet and designed specifically to avoid all gun laws. HSI remains committed to the Baltimore Police Department and all of our local, state, and federal partners to investigate criminal organizations involved in firearms and narcotics trafficking and reducing the associated violence in our neighborhoods. Our partnership is strong, but there is more work to be done. Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Special Agent in Charge, and thank you, Commissioner Harrison. And first, let me thank Major Brown and the entire team here at the Northwest District for their great work on this case. This is another great example of the power of collaboration between local, state, and federal partners. It is no secret that violent crime is Baltimore's most pressing issue, and tackling it, of course, is my top priority as mayor. If we are serious about building a safer Baltimore, we must work together to send a message, and a clear message, that gun violence and trafficking will not be tolerated. We will find you, and I'll say that again, we will find you and we will bring you to justice and hold you accountable. Today's announcement is proof of that no matter who you are, if you choose to engage in gun trafficking or the production of ghost guns, BPD will hold you accountable. Indeed, we know that gun violence is an epidemic, and if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. I again thank BPD for this effort. This is in a continuation of the work that they do each and every day to remove guns and people who sell guns and people who traffic guns and people who sell and traffic illegal drugs onto our streets and our communities, to bring them into justice. This is just one part of that fight. We want to thank them again for their efforts. We want to continue to celebrate their gains, while I know that we all still have a long way to go. But what you see before us is guns that we know would have been used to rob somebody. We know would have been used to shoot someone or kill someone in Baltimore City. And that's how we can work each and every day to make sure that we're curing ourselves and ridding ourselves of this disease of violence. So thank you again to everyone. And now I'll turn it over to the Police Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership. This time we'll take a few questions.
I have two questions, one related to this and one related to the situation in Anne Arundel County. Let's start with this. What is the market? How much does it cost to order the gun, ship the gun, make it, and then distribute it, if you're going to distribute it in an illegal sense? What is the market? And secondly, as part of that, is how much does this add to the challenge of disrupting illegal gun trafficking?
Well, two good questions, Jane. The cost of the ghost guns is no different than probably the cost of a regular firearm that you can buy in a store, but you can buy them over the internet and have it shipped in parts, that is, anywhere, and to anyone who can purchase it. And so it presents a major challenge, not just to us, but to law enforcement in general everywhere, because we're not able to trace it to its origin many times, and they're winding up in the hands of the wrong people who should not be able to buy a gun through this means for the price of what they would spend, or maybe less, can order these, have it shipped, and with following a few minor, simplistic directions, can assemble them and have a fully functional firearm.
And Jane, just to add to the Commissioner's point, this is not just a Baltimore issue, this is a national issue. We actually had this conversation directly about ghost guns with the President a few weeks ago, and this is an issue that I know that our congressional delegation is talking about and interested in handling, but something that has to be dealt with on the national level. At some point in this country, the sanctity of American lives have to outweigh the sanctity of American guns. And now we're seeing folks being able to make guns right off the internet, go out and kill people each and every day in cities and places around the country. That's something that should be dealt with, not just by us here, but we have to continue to lift that conversation up nationally, and very pleased that the president wants to actually have that conversation with local governments and people in states around the country.
Can you just comment on the situation involving Officer Banks in Anne Arundel County?
Yes, the Deputy Commissioner and I have been in communication with the Chief of Anne Arundel County throughout the night and this morning. The investigation is an investigation being handled by Anne Arundel County, so any questions about the investigation should be forwarded to Anne Arundel County. However, the officer was already suspended based on a previous incident, is now suspended without pay, pending the outcome of that criminal and administrative investigation.
Would the mayor like to comment at all about the situation in Anne Arundel County?
My comments are the same as the police commission. Already suspended, and we'll work with our partners in Anne Arundel County as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Was the
also, of
previous-
course,
was the
and then
previous
also, of
incident-
course, just prayers to the family for the loss of a life of a young person.
Was the previous incident also an alleged domestic incident?
Well, I'm not privileged to comment about what the previous incident was about, but it was an incident that required us to suspend the officer. And now he's suspended without pay pending the outcome of the Anne Arundel County investigation.
Commissioner Harrison, you said that there needs to be real consequences for people who have these guns. What type of real consequences are you looking for, and whose responsibility is that to ensure those consequences are in place?
Well, it's all of us within the criminal justice system, police, prosecution, courts, and corrections. And real consequences, when you hear me talk about that, it has to be not necessarily severity, but swiftness and certainty, that when a person knows that there are consequences coming, that can be a big deterrent fact. But it has to be swift and it has to be certain. So it's a collaborative effort between all parts of the criminal justice system. You just saw us do our part.
And so looking at the election results in New York City with what we're seeing right now, some are seeing this as a way of a rejection of some progressive policies and citizens getting fed up with some of the violent crime that they're seeing, not just in New York, but in cities all across the country. Would you agree with that, and how do you think that plays out in the conversation that we're seeing in Baltimore?
Well, while I follow New York a little bit, I'm really more focused on what's happening here in Baltimore. And everybody is fed up with crime, but there's a reality that this department, with shrinking resources, we have to really be focused, and we are concerned with the rise in violent crime more than anything else. Of course, we're concerned about it all, but violent crime, gun violence, the drug organizations that create that violence, that's what this press conference is all about, and that's where our main focus is, to make sure that we can find people who are committing violent crime, people who are perpetuating the drug industry that sometimes fuels it. It's not always, but sometimes it does, and making sure we're holding all of them accountable here in Baltimore.
That was it? Really quickly. Okay. I just wanted, Mayor Scott, can you weigh in on the pendulum swinging between law and order and progressive policies and the conversation
I'm focused on
here?
Baltimore and not New York. And we know that here in Baltimore, what we want you guys to do is get out of the talking points and get into reality and talk about the balance, that we have to hold people accountable. We have to make sure that we're bringing those folks to justice, but that we also don't have to go back to the things that got into us a consent decree in the first place. It's about focusing in on the right people, consistently bringing those people to justice and doing what we're doing now, bringing our state and our federal partners back to the table so that we can make sure here in Baltimore City that there's swift, certain consequences and that we don't see the cycle continue.
Mayor, while you're there, just related to the weekend, Baltimore was somewhat of an outlier on Sunday night with pretty large 4th of July celebrations going on. Philadelphia, D.C., New York, West Coast, San Diego, San Francisco. Looking back, do you have any second thoughts about not putting on a kind of a big celebration like other cities did?
No, I don't, Jane. I think that we made that decision early on. As we said last week, we're working to see how we can have a celebration maybe later this summer if it's appropriate, but I think that also we would be very remiss to not talk about the Delta variant and making sure that we're looking at that and looking at that horizon as well. We know that places around the state and other folks had fireworks. We know that some, like Ocean City, unfortunately had to be canceled. We know that next year we'll be back and hopefully normal at that point, but we do not regret the decision. We will continue to move forward to see what we can do later this summer.